Hello friends, welcome to the Abundant Life. Today we shall talk about depression. Are you surprised about the connection between the abundant life and depression? There seems to be some kind of error over here, isn't it? Well, the truth is that even if you are experiencing the abundant life, there are times when one will have to face depression, mostly in very mild form. And to experience abundance in life, we need to understand why this depression has taken place. So that's what we will do today. We will try to understand depression in the first of three parts. Namely, today I shall talk about the symptoms of depression. I was recently addressing a group of matured Christians, and I asked them if they knew of any depressed persons. Guess what? Only 3 of them said that they knew some depressed persons. The truth is that there are many persons in our midst who suffer from some form of depression, which can be either bearable or unbearable. But most of us do not recognize it. How do I know this? Well, it happened with me. My father-in-law, who seemed mentally sound, suddenly went and ended his life by jumping in a well. And we, the family and neighbors, were totally taken by surprise. Yes, indeed, every month or so, one reads or hears about someone or the other committing suicide. Such people, including my father-in-law, must have definitely shown telltale signs which we failed to recognize. Yes, indeed, the family left behind painfully experiences shock, disbelief, guilt, and the family asks, what did we do or say that was so very wrong which made our beloved family member to commit suicide? Friends, the truth is that in many cases of suicide, there is a subtle and insidious progression of depression, so gradual that the family members fail to recognize it till it is too late. And that's what happened with me. If the truth be told, apart from others, we ourselves may be experiencing depression that we may be unaware of till someone questions us about some odd behavior. Yes, indeed, in this modern world, depression is rampant and spares no one, young or old, rich or poor, famous or unknown, literate or illiterate, and goes beyond the bounds of religion, caste, and class. Psychological counselors recognize 3 phases of depression: mild, severe, and serious. Some other counselors describe these as disappointment, despondency, and despair. However, the borderline between these 3 phases is rather thin, and over a period of time may progress from one phase into the other. For example, mild depression starts with discouragement, as for instance, when you don't get a job that you have applied for, or a marriage proposal doesn't work out. Certainly, that becomes very discouraging for the person concerned. Now, if this state continues, then the depression may progress to becoming severe, and that's what we call despondency, which is a strong feeling of dejection or unhappiness. Here the person moans, "What's lacking in me? Why can't I find a job or find a suitable marriage partner?" Well, in a matter of days or weeks, if there is nothing positive happening, then this person's depression may become serious and may turn into despair, where he or she says, "I am not good enough or worthy enough. I will never find a job or a suitable partner in life." The tragedy is that such prolonged despair, if unchecked or untreated, may become fertile ground for suicidal thoughts and tendencies. Now, there are many signs or symptoms of depression, mental, emotional, physical, or a combination of these, which may be significant and worth considering. But before I continue, let me share a very important word of caution by giving you the analogy of a hypochondriac. This hypochondriac is listening to a TV program on health issues. With each symptom that is discussed, the hypochondriac will say, "Oh my gosh, I have that same problem." And at the end of the TV program, she will be sobbing her heart out, saying or believing that she has all the health problems that were discussed on the TV. Now, I shall be sharing a number of symptoms of depression. Please, don't jump to any faulty conclusion like this hypochondriac about the state of your mental health or that of your family members. That's for the psychiatrist or counselor to decide. What I will be sharing with you is to build up your awareness regarding depression, because they say, "Forewarned is forearmed." Had I known things, I might have helped my father-in-law and prevented him from committing suicide. Please also note that you can easily find what I am sharing on the net or in various books on the subject of depression. So now, let's look at some common symptoms of depression. I will be talking of 10 such symptoms, while there are many more. The first is disturbed or erratic sleep patterns or behavior. Such behaviors may be seen in 4 categories, namely insomnia, where the person finds difficulty in sleeping and can remain wide awake for a full day or more. Secondly, partial insomnia or brief sleep, where the person gets sleep for a short while but soon awakens and can't get back to sleep again. Thirdly, oversleeping, but instead of getting up feeling refreshed, the person awakes tired and exhausted. Lastly, despite sufficient sleep at night, the person feels sleepy throughout the day, maybe even in the midst of work. So we saw disturbed sleep patterns. Now let's see the second point, eating habits. The depressed person experiences a loss of appetite and finds no joy in eating. In fact, will play around with the food on the plate, and therefore eats less and loses weight. Whereas earlier the same person might have been told, please don't go to the fridge, you're eating too much. Let's look at the third point, physical maladies, which are often psychosomatic, namely where the mind controls the body. These abound in the life of a depressed person who experiences aches and pains, either real or imagined. Most commonly, breathlessness, tightening of the chest, heart palpitations, also dizziness, headaches, and other bodily aches, weakness, tiredness, constipation, acidity, and heartburn. The depressed person may face some or most of these above mentioned maladies in mild or more grievous form. Let's look at the fourth point. Let me give you an example. Many normal senior citizens like me will certainly agree that we sometimes start moving towards the fridge or the table, but when we reach there, we cannot remember what we wanted. Similarly, this may happen in a depressed person, but they may experience remembering difficulties to a greater extent and much more frequently, including whether they have taken their medication or not. And some depressed persons will tell people, even if they have just finished eating, that they have not been given food. Linked with this, they may experience difficulty in concentration on a task for any length of time. Hence, they will jump from one job to the next without completing the first. They may also experience helplessness in simple decision making. For example, you and I have no difficulty in choosing what to wear, but a depressed person may stand before the cupboard and wonder what to wear. The story is told of a depressed woman who sent her husband to the market to buy groceries. When he returned after a couple of hours, she was still sitting helplessly at the table with the recipe book open before her. Why? Because she just could not decide what to cook for that day. Now, this may seem like procrastination, but it isn't so, because the normal procrastination is a deliberate act of one's will. You choose to dilly-dally, as for instance, some daily wage workers do. Whereas this is not so in a depressed person's case. Let's look at the fifth point. A depressed person is generally one who experiences emotional excesses. Let's examine just three of them. Firstly, excessive weeping or crying. You and I cry definitely if we go for a funeral or see some sad movie. But in the case of the depressed person, this weeping is involuntary. The person has no control over it. This crying is also baseless or without cause and is also frequent. Secondly, they experience anxiety, fear, and worry over petty or minor issues. For example, they don't want their family members to leave the house. Why? They are afraid they will meet with an accident. The actual fear that the depressed person has is that of being left alone in the house. Thirdly, they experience hostility or anger. This is often directed at every Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, Larry who they believe have insulted or rejected them. But very soon, the depressed person turns this hostility inward, feeling that she has caused Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, Larry to reject or insult her. And such persons often say things like, I hate myself. I get disgusted with myself. Let's look at the next point. Sloppy or untidy appearance. This is one of the clearest signs of depression, especially if the person has normally been very neat and well-dressed and well-groomed. Truly has it been said that one's clothes are very revealing of one's mental state of mind. Sloppy dressing comes from the negative or poor self-image of the depressed person. They have given up on themselves and experience a low self-worth. I have seen this happening in some widowed persons where they say, what's the use of dressing up? The person I loved is dead and gone. Why should I dress up? The next point we'll consider is sadness and joylessness. Once again, it has rightly been said that the eyes are the windows of the soul. This is especially true in the case of depressed persons, whose eyes show nothing but sadness and joylessness, together with helplessness and emptiness, even when they bravely try to put on a smile. They don't respond to a joke or any humorous action. Note, there is a loss of affection or a lessening of their love even for their spouses, particularly seen in the loss of their sex drive. Then they even lose a sense of love for their children and grandchildren whom they once cherished. The sequence is progressive. First, they don't seem to care about themselves, and gradually they don't seem to care about their surroundings or about the persons in their surroundings. The next point is the interest lost in living. This point is linked with the previous one on sadness. Depressed persons have no zest for life. Their earlier joie de vivre is now changed into apathy and lethargy. They become bored, listless, dull, having no interest in anything or anyone, together with the fact that they appear to be tired and lacking in energy. Depressed persons who once were creative and outgoing now do not wish to participate or take the initiative in doing things which they were well known for. I remember a woman who was very creative in making dainty little cupcakes or sweets and chocolates. When her husband passed away, she just gave up everything and went into depression. In certain cases, they manifest social withdrawal and prefer to remain isolated like hermit crabs. Speaking of crabs, brings me to the next point, namely outbursts of irritability. Depressed people become crabby, bad-tempered, rude, and unpleasant in their behavior. The different sounds around the house, like that of children playing or music from the TV or radio, irritate them, and they may shout that those things should be put off. They can't bear to see the vitality and energy shown by their family members, while they themselves are apparently armchair bound. They snap at visitors who are solicitous about their health, shouting, "Only now you found the time for me? Where were you all these days and weeks?" The unknown fact to them is that subconsciously they don't feel worthy of these visits or of the time and concern these visitors show. In many cases, they are really speaking, craving for some attention based on their psychologically faulty thinking patterns of self-preoccupation and self-pity. The last point I'd like to discuss is no hope in life. Feelings of hopelessness preoccupy the depressed person's mind. The typical lament one hears is, "What is there for me to continue living? Why isn't God taking me home?" They will hold your hand and beg, "Please pray that God will take me away soon from this world." In some cases, this hopelessness could be indicative of loss of faith in God and in the church and in people around. And then some may start planning their own suicide. As for example, in the case of my father-in-law, he committed suicide on the 24th of June. You remember what that date is? It is the feast of San Juan, where people jump in the wells. So I have a feeling he had planned it and chose 24th of June to jump in the well. Friends, there are certainly many other symptoms of depression, but today I have touched on only 10 symptoms as follows. D for disturbed sleep, E for eating habits, P for physical maladies, R for remembering difficulties, E for emotional excesses, S for sloppy appearance, S again for sadness, I for interest that is lost in life, O for outbursts of irritability, and N for no hope. And if you look at it, it spells out depression. My dear friends, when we meet again, we will see the causes and remedies connected with depression. And for those of you who may want to know more about where I got my information, I got it from 2 books. Let me read it out for you. The first, How to Win Over Depression by Tim LaHaye, and the second book, Emerging from Depression by William E. Rabior. I got these from St. Paul's. And once again, let me remind you, please do not jump to conclusions. You may see 1 or 2 symptoms in yourself or others, but don't decide that you are depressed. And if it is so, then go to the doctor, go to the psychiatrist, go to the counselor, talk about it. I wish you all the best in understanding yourself vis-a-vis the depressions you face. God bless you.